Following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFN Geek, and as you can tell by the thumbnail and the title of the video, today we're going to be doing a review of the Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Kingdom Leader Class Galvatron. Released in Wave 2 of the Kingdom line, Galvatron was one of the more anticipated figures of the Kingdom line since Transformers fans and collectors have, for several years, been wanting to have a leader class-sized Galvatron action figure. And unfortunately, Galvatron isn't quite the leader class figure collectors had anticipated he would be, and that's because during the War for Cybertron Trilogy, the size of leader class Transformers was downsized, and so instead of being a traditional sized leader class Transformers figure with an average height of between 11 to 12 inches tall, Kingdom Galvatron is, I believe, at the most 10 inches tall, so he's not as enormous or tall as previous leader class size Transformers figures. And Kingdom Galvatron is roughly the same size as the previous Galvatron figure released, which was the Titans Return Galvatron action figure, which was sold as a Voyager class figure. So here's the back of Galvatron's box. There's his robot mode and his vehicle mode of a space cannon, and he transforms back and forth between both modes in 33 steps. Around here to the front of the box, as you can tell, I already removed Galvatron from the packaging, so there's his artwork of his space cannon mode and his robot mode as well. And just like on the artwork, Galvatron does come with the Autobot Matrix of leadership that can be attached to a chain that he wears around his neck as a reference to the original Transformers Generation 1 movie. And right here on the top of the box, Galvatron is the 28th Transformers figure to be released in the Kingdom line. He is a Decepticon. He is as much of a Decepticon as Decepticon Transformers come. So, setting the box aside. Alright, and here is Kingdom Galvatron right out of the box and transformed into his robot mode. And the main reason I took Galvatron out of the box is because my copy of Galvatron originally had the reverse shoulders. Early releases of Kingdom Galvatron, the shoulder joint was attached to the figure upside down. More recent releases have had the shoulder corrected, but for people who got a hold of Kingdom Galvatron early, which is what I did, thanks to Amazon, I was able to get a hold of Kingdom Galvatron back in July for my birthday. But there's been one of two solutions primarily when it comes to Kingdom Galvatron. Either Transformers fans and collectors have been forced to live with the incorrect shoulders and try to find solutions such as rotating the shoulder joint and flipping it around so it faces backwards so the shoulder sits up higher. Or some collectors who wanted to go the extra mile and thought it was worth the risk actually disassembled the shoulder, which has been a very tricky move, and the reason why I say it's tricky is because you take the shoulder apart, disassemble it, and then reassemble it to the correct orientation at risk of breaking your Galvatron action figure. And unfortunately, on my copy of Galvatron, the tools that I used to fix his shoulders, I was able to successfully fix the shoulders, but it came at a price that there's now scratches and stress marks and chipped off bits of plastic on the shoulders. So yeah, Galvatron's shoulders aren't in pristine condition anymore on my copy. But considering the battle damage look that Hasbro and Descartes told me wanted to go with Galvatron with the battle damage paint markings on his robot mode chest, his arms, and his legs, it's it for what it is. So in addition to his fusion cannon, Galvatron also comes with the Autobot Matrix of leadership that can be attached to a chain. I believe it's the exact same Autobot Matrix of leadership that was given to the War for Cybertron Trilogy Optimus Prime figure, and also for Hot Rod. There's a little slot here on the chest where you can insert it here on Galvatron, and it gives the illusion that he's wearing it around his neck, but if you look here on the back, yeah, it's just hovering there behind him. So if you want Galvatron to actually have the chain sitting at the base of his neck there on the back, then this is the way to do it here. And unfortunately, there's no tab for it to attach to when you have it actually draping around on Galvatron's neck like that. Considering the fact that Galvatron only wore the Matrix of Leadership as a chain during the Transformers Generation 1 movie, it's an accessory piece that is seen on camera, I believe, for less than a minute. And it's so, for me personally, it's the most useless accessory piece Galvatron comes with. But also, Galvatron comes with this dual barrel laser gun, which can separate in half into two different laser guns. And when you flip the laser gun upside down, these two gray laser guns that Galvatron comes with, they're based on the spaceship that Unicron gives Galvatron on when he reformats the Decepticon and Galvatron is created. After the Transformers Generation 1 movie, to my knowledge, the spaceship is never seen again. And if you want it to be screen accurate, instead of gray, it should be purple. But I guess the Hasbro and Tomy figure gray plastic would be enough for it. And one thing you can do is you can mount it on Galvatron's other arm, so he now has a cannon on both of his arms. And one thing to note about Galvatron is that he has two 5mm pegs on his arm, one at the bicep and one on the forearm or lower arm. And the reason why that is because as attaching Galvatron's fusion cannon to his upper arm is accurate to his appearance in the G1 cartoon and the Generation 1 Galvatron action figure. But if you put it down here on his lower arm, it's slightly more accurate to how Galvatron appeared in the Transformers Generation 1 comic books. And attaching the fusion cannon to the lower arm is where the fusion cannon technically went on Generation 1 Megatron. So if you want Galvatron to look more like Megatron, you can put the fusion cannon and the 5mm peg on his lower arm. But if you want to go full-blown Generation 1 accuracy, then putting it on the bicep on the upper arm is more accurate. Okay. So I won't go over Galvatron's articulation too much. It's pretty standard articulation for a leader class figure. You've got a bulge-rated head, so Galvatron can look up and downward ever so slightly, and he can rotate left and right 360 degrees. Even if you have the bad shoulders and you don't want to try and do the shoulder fig, the shoulders can rotate forwards and backwards 360 degrees. There is a rotation joint at the bicep, but that noise you're hearing is Galvatron's tank treads actually plug into 5mm sized holes, which are actually the spot where the pins that keep the shoulder joint attached, and that's the metal pin you have to remove if you want to do the shoulder fix. So to get the full range of articulation in Galvatron's arms, you do have to detach his tank tread, as which just sit on the back of his arms as robot mode kibble. It is unfortunate that the tank treads can't really go anywhere else, but that is accurate to how Galvatron transformed the Generation 1 action figure and in the Generation 1 cartoon series. He does have a waist rotation, but because the top section of the cannon sits on Galvatron's lower back, it does hinder it ever so slightly. Same thing with moving the legs forwards and backwards. You got universal jointed hips, so Galvatron has the potential to do the splits, but because of these two little skirt armor pieces that have sculpted in laser gun ports, or it's on them, it hinders that as well. Joints that aren't hindered are the ones below the waist. You have thigh swivels, hinged knees. You have ankle rockers in the feet, and what's really cool is that when you tilt Galvatron's foot, this piece right here moves along with it, so you aren't left with a gap at Galvatron's ankle. No articulation in the toes, but even though it's a transformation joint, if you wanted Galvatron's heel spurs to move up and down, you have that option as well. So even though Galvatron is technically the same size as an old school Voyager class Transformers action figure, since I did the shoulder fix, once the shoulders are assembled properly, Galvatron can be one of the more impressive Transformers figures from the entire Transformers Kingdom line and the War for Cybertron trilogy as a whole. So is it upsetting that Galvatron is the same size as an old school Voyager class Transformer, even though he's a leader class? It is kind of, but considering how past action figures of Galvatron weren't the greatest, the Kingdom version does a pretty amazing job for being what it is. So for size comparisons, here's the previously released Galvatron action figure from Hasbro and Tomy, the Titans Return Voyager class Galvatron figure. As you can see, Kingdom Galvatron and Titans Return Galvatron, they are the exact same size. Titans Return Galvatron has the illusion of being bigger because he has a bulkier fusion cannon and he has a taller back tower hour in the back of him. But if you arm up Galvatron with his Kingdom Galvatron with his extra accessory pieces like this, is Kingdom Galvatron does have the same size of use the same amount of plastic that Titans Return Galvatron does. And even though I can't really show it off camera, the Kingdom Galvatron figure, it has a lot more weight than the Titans Return version of Galvatron. Even though Titans Return Galvatron looks bulkier, I can feel it in my hands. The Kingdom Galvatron action figure is much heavier. There's less hollowed parts compared to Titans Return Galvatron, and it's basically comparing the equivalent of a beach ball with a bowling ball. Even though a bowling ball takes up less volume of space than a beach ball does, a beach ball has a lot less mass than a bowling ball does. So that's what comparing Titans Return Galvatron with Kingdom Galvatron is. And for another size comparison, here's Kingdom Galvatron next to Siege of Voyager class Megatron. And as you can see here, yeah, Kingdom Galvatron is going to be one of those Transformers action figures who unfortunately show those collectors how the size of Transformers action figures is slowly decreasing by Hasbro and Dakar Tomy. And how Transformers figures are getting smaller than what they used to be. Because Galvatron and Megatron are almost the same size, even though Megatron is officially a Voyager class figure and Galvatron a leader class. It is cartoon accurate. Galvatron did become in the cartoon series. Galvatron did become a slightly taller robot compared to Megatron. And in the Generation 1 action figures, the Generation 1 Galvatron action figure was twice the size of Generation 1 Megatron. I believe Generation 1 Megatron, the top of his head came up to Galvatron's waist. So for one last special size comparison, which I will not be doing when I transform Galvatron into his vehicle mode, here's the first ever Voyager class sized action figure based on Generation 1 Galvatron that I purchased. This is a third-party Galvatron figure. This is Unique Toys Mania King, the vintage color version. And the reason why I wanted to bring this out is because this third-party version of Galvatron has the helmet design that Galvatron was given in the Transformers Kingdom animated series that was released on Netflix. Kingdom Galvatron's head crest is based slightly more on Generation 1 Galvatron's head crest. The three spikes on top of Galvatron's head, it was basically designed to look almost like a traditional European type crown that European monarchs used to wear. Whereas Unique Toys Mania King, this version of Galvatron, I believe Mania King based it off of Galvatron's appearance in IDW's comic books, which was the basis for the animation model of Galvatron in the War for Cybertron Trilogy cartoon series released by Netflix. And this one, I believe, is supposed to be based more off of a samurai warrior's helmet, and that's why people who are fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles might notice that the spikes on this version of Galvatron, the helmet looks more like the Shredder from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. So yes, for those of you wondering why Galvatron's helmet doesn't match up the helmet that he had in the Netflix series, that's the reason why. So without further delay, and now that we've taken a look at how magnificent Galvatron looks like in robot mode, let's take a close look at him in his vehicle mode. Alright, and here is Kingdom Galvatron transformed into his space cannon mode, and for what it does as being a science fictional vehicle that Hasbro and Dakar Tomy originally designed for the Transformers Generation 1 movie, I think it is a pretty impressive looking space cannon. So the idea behind Galvatron transforming into a cannon was because Generation 1 Megatron originally transformed into a Walter P-38 pistol, and so Hasbro and Takara Tomy, the designers, figured when the decision was made to have Galvatron be an upgraded version of Megatron rather than his own character, the decision was made that Megatron, when he upgraded into Galvatron, he basically upgraded his vehicle mode from a handgun to a giant cannon, and so a bigger form of firearms. For what it did at the time in the 1980s, it was a pretty impressive decision in the marketing team. But today, people have different views about weaponry. But what it all boils down to is that Galvatron still comes off as being one of the more menacing-looking Decepticons. And infamously in the Transformers Generation 1 cartoon series, the decision was made that rather than being a cold-hearted dictator the way Megatron was, Galvatron actually went insane, and so he became a crazy psychopath. And even though the Generation 1 cartoon series isn't the only cartoon series that Galvatron has appeared in, one thing that Hasbro in particular has tried to concentrate on is having Megatron remain Megatron, and because Galvatron has only in a couple of Transformers comic books been treated as being a separate character from Megatron, Galvatron hasn't really made too many significant appearances in Transformers media in recent years. But for me personally, Galvatron has always remained one of my favorite Transformers characters. When I first was introduced to the Transformers franchise, I wholeheartedly enjoyed the idea that Megatron wasn't evil enough as Megatron, which is why he upgrades into Galvatron to become even more evil than he was before. So I think it works out that way. So for a size comparison, here is Kingdom Galvatron next to Titans Return Galvatron. As you can see in Space Cannon mode, they are roughly the same length. Kingdom Galvatron is taller in Cannon mode than Titans Return Galvatron, and again you can feel the weight. Kingdom Galvatron is a much heavier Transformers figure than Titans Return Galvatron. For another size comparison in alternate mode, here is Kingdom Galvatron next to Siege Megatron. Now, because most people don't like the idea of children being exposed to firearms, in more recent years, Hasbro and Takara Tomy instead of a handgun like the original Generation 1 Megatron action figure was in 1984. In more recent years, Megatron has more frequently been given a battle tank for his vehicle mode. So, Galvatron's vehicle mode of a science fictional or Cybertron space cannon compared to a battle tank, and it's not as much of an upgrade compared to Generation 1 Megatron's original alternate mode. But Galvatron does look a lot more menacing since he transforms into a type of cannon that you wouldn't see in real life. But I lost my train of thought there for a second, so it's not as much of an upgrade as it was. The vehicle mode isn't as much of an upgrade as the robot mode is when comparing Galvatron to a version of Megatron that has a battle tank for an alternate mode. But it does a pretty good job of making Galvatron look like a threat in both his robot mode and his vehicle mode. Galvatron does have some plastic wheels here on the bottom. The tank treads aren't functional treads. And that's partially because of how they fold up here at the base of the robot mode arms. But he can roll on a flat surface if you desire to. Now, one problem that a couple of collectors have had with Kingdom Galvatron is trying to get the two front tank treads to sit level with the back support, and that's because to get them level with each other, you really have to sprawl out the front and support tank tread heads here on the Kingdom Galvatron. A lot of collectors were under the impression that they had to be almost vertical, the way Titans Return Galvatron's tank treads were. But Kingdom Galvatron's tank treads, after messing around with him a couple of times both before and after I fixed the shoulders, Galvatron's tank treads are actually supposed to be sprawled out really far apart like this. This is sort of accurate to Galvatron's animation model in the Generation 1 cartoon series. So yes, for those of you who have been having trouble getting all of Galvatron's 3 tank treads to sit it at the same level on a solid surface, that's probably the reason why you haven't spread out the front ones far enough for them to sit flush with each other. And to attach Galvatron's other accessory pieces, you take the Matrix of Leadership, and unfortunately, I recommend you remove the orange fusion cannon before you attach the Matrix of Leadership, but you can leave it on as you just saw. So you can attach the Matrix chain right here on the front of the cannon, and you can have Galvatron use it as a hood ornament and in cannon mode. On some of Galvatron's product photos, it shows that the two gray laser guns, the spaceship laser guns, it shows them attaching them here to these ports right here, but I found out that they accidentally bump into this section in the back. There are supports in there sculpted into the spaceship guns that ensuring that you are in fact supposed to attach them like that, add onto the sides of Galvatron's cannon. And so yeah, you can do it like that, but again, and if you don't plug them on properly, they could pop off more easily. So that's the official option. There's a couple of other places where you could put these attach these cannons onto Galvatron. Another place you can do is if you want to have Galvatron be more of a tri-pronged cannon, you can attach the laser guns here on the base of his tray. As in now, Galvatron is a 3-barreled cannon, and if you so desire. The problem with these spaceship laser guns that Galvatron comes with is that at the 5mm peg is actually sits up higher than the base of the laser gun as well, and there's not much clearance between the 5mm peg itself and that bottom section on it. So even though these gray laser guns are 5mm compatible, well, if you were to try and attach them to a 5mm peg that's sitting right in the middle of a flat surface, you aren't going to be able to plug these in because the clearance space that it has is very minimal. So that's one minor gripe I have with Galvatron, is that the places where you connect these gray laser guns are a little awkward, and they aren't the best in terms of actual weapons you use for Galvatron. And pretty much what the gray laser guns have going for them is the fact that they're based off of the spaceship that Unicron gave Galvatron in the Transformers Generation 1 movie. So for my final thoughts, do I recommend getting Kingdom Galvatron and adding to your collection? Absolutely I do. I agree with what most fans and collectors have said. This is the best Galvatron figure that we have gotten from Hasbro and Takara Tomy. The Kingdom version of Galvatron blows the Titans Return version of Galvatron on away with how incredible and impressive it is, and it does, despite my lackluster opinion on it earlier in the review, the Kingdom version of Galvatron does feel like an upgrade to the Siege version of Megatron. In the Netflix series, Galvatron Time Traveled, so we actually got to see Galvatron and Megatron hanging out with each other on camera. But unlike the few Transformers comic book series in which he was a separate character, Galvatron was still an upgraded version of Megatron. Whether or not we're actually going to see on film again and have a Transformers series that has Megatron upgrading into Galvatron being a focal point of the story, or actually seeing the moment that Megatron upgrades into Galvatron again. Whether or not that will ever happen is uncertain at this point. Right. But yes, thank you guys all so much for watching the review. This has been the TFN Geek, and until next time, you guys, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.